Okay, so I want you to just try to transport yourself back to a very specific moment in time for a second.
Okay.
It is May 21st, 1976. And, the United States is gearing up for the bicentennial.
Right. Big cultural moment.
Huge. And musically, disco's really starting to just take over the airwaves. But rock music is in this very weird transition period, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, it was very fragmented time.
Right, because you've got the smooth, super polished sounds of bands like the Eagles on one side.
Super clean production.
Exactly. And then on the other side, you've got this bubbling, spitting energy of punk rock that's just starting to erupt in New York City.
It was definitely a time of friction, in the music world. Like, boundaries were being drawn all over the place.
They really were. And stuck right in the middle of all this is a band that nobody quite knew how to categorize. I mean, they were heavy, they were cryptic, and they had this devoted, almost scary fan base. They were pretty much that textbook definition of a cult band.
Literally. Blue Öyster Cult.
Yes. But on this exact date, May 21st, 1976, they dropped an album that it changed everything. It didn't just open the door to the mainstream. It completely blew the hinges off.
It really did.
We are talking about their fourth studio album, Agents of Fortune. And today, for our deep dive, we're going to rely on the Wikipedia entry for this album to figure out how these heavy metal intellectuals basically went from the underground to platinum-selling superstars.
And did it without losing their souls, which is the really impressive part.
Right, because usually that crossover means selling out. But we're going to unpack the key points from our source material today. We've got a massive radio hit that changed their career forever.
Oh, yeah.
We have this really unique democratic approach to vocals where basically every member grabbed the microphone.
Which is so rare.
So rare. And, of course, a mystery regarding a very specific percussion instrument that people are still arguing about today.
Ah, yes, the famous percussion mystery. I mean, it's one of the most interesting pivots in rock history.
It really is.
I've been looking through the source material, specifically the history of the album's production and the critical reception. And what really strikes me is that this wasn't an accident.
You don't think so?
No, not at all. It was a very deliberate evolution. They managed to polish their sound without, scrubbing away the weirdness that made them who they were.
And that is such a hard line to walk. Because usually when a band gets polished, they just get boring.
Exactly. They lose their edge.
But Agents of Fortune is anything but boring. So let's set the stakes for you listening at home. What is our actual mission for this deep dive today?
The mission is really to figure out the how. How does a band that writes songs about, vampires and secret treaties and esoteric conspiracies land at number 29 on the Billboard 200 and actually stay there?
Right.
How do they bridge that massive gap between obscure heavy metal and pop radio?
Well, to understand that leap, I think we have to look at where they were standing right before they jumped.
Let's look at 1975.
Yeah, 1975. They released On Your Feet or On Your Knees, and that was a live album, right?
It was. And man, it was gritty.
Very raw.
Very raw. It captured their live energy perfectly, which was chaotic and incredibly loud. It cemented their reputation as a killer live act.
But not really radio-friendly.
No, it wasn't exactly something you'd play softly at a dinner party. It was, as some people called it, heavy metal for people who read sci-fi novels.
I love that description. So then comes 1976. They go into the record plant in New York City to record Agents of Fortune. And when people finally heard the finished product, the reaction was, well, it was distinct.
Startling is the word that often gets used in the sources. Rolling Stone had a review that I think just perfectly captures the vibe of the record.
What did they say?
They called the album startlingly excellent, but catch this specific description. They said it was loud but calm, manic but confident, melodic but rocking.
Loud but calm. I mean, that sounds like a total contradiction.
It does sound contradictory, but think about the best production of that specific era in the mid-70s. It's all about control.
Right, reining it in.
Yeah. They took that manic, raw, live energy from 1975 and they focused it like a laser beam. They didn't turn down the volume. They just cleaned up the signal.
And that cleanup really paid off.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the numbers from the source material here. It peaked at now 29 on the U.S. Billboard 200.
Which is huge.
It is. I mean, that might not sound like number one to you, but for a weird cult band like this, that is a massive achievement.
It's a total game changer. And the longevity is the real story here. It achieved platinum certification in the U.S.
That's 1 million copies sold.
Exactly. 1 million units. And it went gold in Canada. This album literally took them from being a band that played sweaty clubs and small theaters to being a major arena attraction.
They were playing in the big leagues overnight.
Suddenly, they were a stadium band.
Okay, well, we really can't dance around it any longer. You don't sell 1 million records just because the production is calm.
No, you don't.
You sell 1 million records because you have a monster hit.
Track 3, side 1.
Don't Fear the Reaper.
It is the elephant in the room, or I guess the Grim Reaper in the room. Right. This song didn't just chart. It embedded itself in the cultural DNA. According to the Wikipedia page, it peaked at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Which is just wild when you actually stop and think about the subject matter. It's a song about eternal love and the inevitability of death.
Not exactly bubblegum pop for the summer.
No, it's super dark.
It is, but it sounds like pop. It's hypnotic. The melody is so smooth. And here is a really crucial detail for our deep dive. If you look at the writing credits for that track...
It wasn't a group jam, was it?
Not at all. It was written entirely by the lead guitarist, Donald Roser, better known as Buck Dharma.
And he sang it too?
He did. He wrote it, and he sang the lead vocals.
That is so fascinating to me. Usually the front man, which is Eric Bloom in this band, he's the voice of the big hit.
Right, the face of the franchise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here, the lead guitarist steps up, writes probably the catchiest riff in classic rock history, grabs the microphone, and just delivers their biggest song ever. That must have radically shifted the dynamic in the band.
It certainly changes the center of gravity, you know?
Yeah.
When the guitarist writes the check that pays everyone's mortgage, things naturally change.
Yeah, I bet.
And that song is the main reason we are still talking about this album 50 years later. It's a total staple. You cannot go a single day listening to classic rock radio without hearing it.
But let's zoom in on the actual production of The Reaper for a second, because there is a very specific sound on that track that has become, well, it's basically a meme at this point.
You're talking about the cowbell.
The cowbell. It's totally iconic. It's the literal heartbeat of the song. But here's where it gets really funny in the source material.
Oh, the debate.
Yeah. You'd think, for a song this incredibly famous, we would have historical consensus on who exactly played the instrument. But looking at the sources, it seems like nobody can actually agree on who hit the thing.
It is surprisingly contested history. The liner notes and all the subsequent interviews over the decades have created this weird Rashomon situation.
So what does the source material actually say?
Well, we have 3 main suspects for the cowbell.
Okay, lay out the lineup for us. Who are the suspects?
Suspect number 1 is Albert Bouchard, the drummer.
Which makes perfect sense.
Right, he's the percussionist. It's his department.
Okay, who's next?
Suspect number 2 is David Lucas, who is one of the producers on the album. Producers often jump into the booth to add a little flavor or texture to a track.
Sure, happens all the time.
And suspect number 3 is Eric Bloom, the lead vocalist.
I just love the image of these guys arguing over this decades later. You have this incredibly profound song about the inevitability of death. It's beautifully arranged. The guitar work is intricate and gorgeous.
And the biggest historical debate is who is clanking the metal cup?
Yes. It's so absurd.
It really adds to the mystique, though. It's this very human, slightly clunky element in an otherwise incredibly smooth track. And the fact that we don't know for sure just lets listeners project whatever they want onto it. It's like the ghost in the machine.
Or the ghost in the percussion section. But honestly, that cowbell confusion actually points to a much bigger theme on Agents of Fortune. The lines between everyone's roles in the band were blurring all over this album.
Yeah, a total shift in dynamics.
You mentioned earlier in the deep dive that this was a democratic experiment.
I did. And this is, to me at least, the most fascinating part of the album's structure. Yeah. If you look at the credits, it is completely unlike any other Blue Öyster Cult record.
How so? Break that down.
The Wikipedia article points out a really amazing statistic. It is the only album in their entire discography where every single original band member sings lead vocals on at least one track.
Wait, really? Every single one, even the guys in the back?
Everyone. You have Eric Bloom obviously taking his turns. You have Donald Buck Dharma Roser singing Reaper.
Right.
But then you have Alan Lanier, the keyboardist and rhythm guitarist. He takes the lead vocals on True Confessions and Tenderloin.
Wow.
Then you have Joe Bouchard, the bassist. He sings lead on Morning Final.
That is incredibly rare. Usually the bassist might get a microphone for some light backup harmonies, and that is it.
Exactly. And then there's Albert Bouchard, the drummer. He's not just singing one novelty song. He is all over this album.
Really?
Yeah, he sings lead on the Revenge of Vera Gemini, Sinful Love, Debbie Denise, and even a bunch of the bonus tracks from later reissues.
That is just wild. The drummer is singing lead on 3 or 4 separate tracks. That sounds like a band that is either incredibly collaborative or maybe they're having a bit of an identity crisis.
Or perhaps they were just completely overflowing with ideas. Remember the context? This is 1976.
Right, the transition period.
They were trying to expand their sound. They didn't want to be painted into a corner as just that heavy metal band anymore. By letting everyone sing, they naturally brought in all these different textures.
That makes sense.
Alan's songs sound completely different from Buck's songs, and Buck's sound different from Albert's. It made the whole album feel like a variety show, but in the best way possible.
But there is a flip side to all this democracy. We really have to talk about Eric Bloom for a second.
The front man.
Yeah, he's the guy in the leather, he's got the stun guitar, he's the definitive face of the band. And yet, look at the songwriting credits on the original release of this album.
It is a massive anomaly. According to the source material, on the original vinyl release of Agents of Fortune, Eric Bloom did not receive a single songwriting credit.
That is mind-blowing to me. The lead singer didn't write any of the songs on their huge breakthrough album.
Not on the original printed credits, no. Which is really strange because historically he was a primary writer for them.
It definitely makes you wonder about the internal politics at the time. Was he pushed out? Was he just experiencing writer's block?
It's hard to say. However, the source material does note that history has been somewhat corrected.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did he eventually get his due?
He did. The Wikipedia entry mentions that on the 2020 live release, which was called 40th Anniversary Agents of Fortune Live 2016, Eric Bloom's name was finally added to the songwriting credits for E.T.I. Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Because E.T.I. is an absolute classic, and honestly, it feels very Eric Bloom.
It really does. It has his fingerprints all over it. And speaking of E.T.I. and expanding boundaries, we have to look at the collaborators on this record.
Yeah.
Because this album wasn't just made in a vacuum by the 5 of them. It was made in New York City. And they brought in some friends who, on paper at least, had absolutely no business being on a heavy metal album.
You're talking about the punk connection.
I am, Patti Smith.
The godmother of punk herself.
Yeah.
I mean, this is huge. In 1976, you generally had the established rock stars in one camp and the gritty street punks in another,
Yeah.
and those two worlds did not mix.
It was a very hard line.
But here she is, right in the middle of a Blue Öyster Cult record.
It really shows you how unique they were. They were intellectual enough and open-minded enough to hang with the downtown art crowd.
Right.
Patti Smith provides vocals on the Revenge of Vera Gemini. But she didn't just show up to sing backup. She co-wrote the track with Albert Bouchard.
Wow.
She also co-wrote the song Debbie Denise.
That crossover is just fascinating. It anchors the whole album in that very specific grimy New York aesthetic. It's a polished record, yes.
Yeah.
But it still has that CBGB's DNA buried somewhere in the mix.
Precisely. It's bridging the gap between the massive stadium and the gritty street. And the crazy thing is, they didn't stop with punk rock. They went the complete opposite direction, too, into jazz.
Horns.
The Brecker brothers, Randy and Michael Brecker.
That's crazy.
These guys are legendary jazz fusion players, and they are playing horns on a Blue Öyster Cult album.
That is such a bold move, because putting horns on a hard rock album in 1976 could so easily sound cheesy. It could sound like a Vegas lounge act.
It was a massive risk, but it signaled to the audience that they were moving away from pure, stripped-down heavy metal. They wanted texture.
They wanted that loud but calm sophistication we talked about.
The horns add a sophisticated punch that just distorted guitars alone simply can't give you.
So we've got jazz horns, we have punk poets, and we have 5 different lead singers. It sounds like it should be an absolute mess.
A total train wreck.
But it works.
Yeah.
It somehow all works.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the themes, though. Because despite all this new polish and these eclectic collaborators, the lyrics are still, well, they're still Blue Öyster Cult.
Oh, absolutely. They definitely didn't start singing about sunshine and rainbows just to get on the radio. Look at the very first track, This Ain't the Summer of Love.
Such a great title. Very cynical.
It sets the tone immediately. Cashbox reviewed that specific single back in the day, and they described it perfectly.
What did they say?
They noted it had growling guitars, and they said it had a mood of evil created in a humorous fashion.
A mood of evil created in a humorous fashion.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like that should just be the band's official motto.
It really is their entire brand. They always wink at the darkness. They know it's theatrical and a bit ridiculous, but they play it straight.
And speaking of theatrical, we have to discuss the song Morning Final. We mentioned earlier that the bassist, Joe Bouchard, sang lead on this one.
Right.
But there is a very specific production choice on this track that I just find hilarious and awesome. The Paperboy.
Yes. This is such a great little detail from the sources. The song has this very urban noir crime scene kind of vibe to it. And right in the middle of it, you hear Eric Bloom. But he's not singing a melody. He is using what the source material describes as a paperboy voice.
For you listening who haven't heard the track in a while, paint the picture. What does it actually sound like?
Imagine an old black and white 1940s movie. You know, a kid standing on a street corner shouting, "Extra, extra, read all about it."
Right.
Bloom is literally shouting out tragic headlines in this highly stylized, almost old-timey radio play voice. It completely breaks the fourth wall of the song.
I just love that. It's so campy, but it fits the move perfectly. It turns a standard rock song into a little mini-movie. It reminds you that this band isn't just about playing music, it's about deep world building.
And that world building definitely extends to the visual presentation of the album, too, the cover art.
Oh, the cover is iconic. It's not a picture of the band looking tough in an alleyway. And it's not a fantasy dragon or something.
No, it's a painting by an artist named Lynn Curley, and it depicts a magician. Specifically, it's based on the famous Belgian magician Hervé Leroy.
And he's standing there holding tarot cards, right?
Yes, he's holding 4 tarot cards. It really reinforces that cryptic, occult aesthetic they were known for. So even though they were reaching for the mainstream pop charts with The Reaper, the actual packaging of the album told the fans, we are still the mysterious wizards of rock.
Don't worry, we're still weird.
Exactly.
So the whole package was complete, the sound was evolved and polished, the visuals were totally on point, and the fans obviously bought it, to the tune of 1 million copies. But what about the critics?
The critics loved it.
Really? Because usually, when a weird cult band suddenly goes big and gets on the radio, the critics immediately turn on them. Did they get accused of selling out?
Surprisingly, no. The acclaim was actually very high, and it came from very different corners of the music journalism world. We already mentioned that glowing Rolling Stone review.
Right.
But look at the Village Voice.
Oh, wow. That's the cool, ultra-hip downtown paper?
Right. In their incredibly famous Pazinjop Critics poll for 1976, Agents of Fortune was ranked number 10.
Number 10 for the whole year.
Yes, and remember, that is a poll of the nation's snobbiest, most critical rock writers. To crack the top 10 on that list is a massive badge of honor for a heavy metal band.
That completely validates them as real artists, not just commercial unit shifters.
Exactly, and the praise extended across the ocean, too. NME, the New Musical Express in the UK, they ranked it number 6 in their albums of the year.
That's fascinating. The British press was usually very skeptical of slick American rock at that time.
They were, but they loved this record, and it really stood the test of time, too. The source material notes that in 2004, Q magazine listed it in their feature on the greatest classic rock albums ever.
So this wasn't just a flash in the pan. It was immediately recognized as a quality piece of work, and it maintained that status.
Absolutely.
I want to circle back to something before we close out our deep dive today. We talked a lot about how Don't Fear the Reaper completely dominates the legacy of this album.
It's unavoidable.
But looking at the songwriting credits again, I'm really struck by just how much Albert Bouchard, the drummer, actually contributed to the whole project.
He was incredibly prolific on this record.
He wrote or co-wrote This Ain't the Summer of Love, The Revenge of Vera Gemini, Sinful Love, Tattoo Vampire, and Debbie Denise.
It is a really significant observation. Albert was arguably the creative MVP of the entire album in terms of sheer volume and variety. He was the one really driving the weirdness and the experimentation.
And it's almost tragic, in a way. You have this guy pouring his creative soul into the record, writing all these cool, edgy collaborations with Patti Smith.
And then the guitarist writes one beautiful song about death, and that is the only one everyone remembers forever.
Exactly. It's kind of sad.
It is the ultimate paradox of the mega hit. It lifts the entire band up to superstar status, but it can also completely overshadow the intricate, weird work that supports it. The Reaper is the sun. And the rest of the songs, the paperboy voices, the jazz horns, the Patti Smith duets, they are just the planets orbiting it. You can't see them as clearly because the sun is just so incredibly bright.
That is a really great way to put it. So let's summarize what we've learned in this deep dive. Agents of Fortune wasn't just, the album with the Cowbell song.
Far from it. It was a perfect storm of circumstances. You had a band that had honed their chops on the road for years and years. You had a deliberate shift in production to something cleaner, that loud but calm aesthetic.
Right.
You had a willingness to experiment with crazy genres, bringing in jazz horns and downtown punk rock.
Yeah.
And crucially, you had a democratic approach where everyone in the room felt empowered to step up to the microphone.
And the crazy thing is, it worked. They actually crossed over without selling out. They basically brought the mainstream audience into their weird little dark castle, rather than leaving the castle to go pander to the mainstream.
That is the key to the whole album. They made the sound catchy enough for FM radio, but they kept the soul of it dark enough for the cult.
So here's the question I want to leave you with today, and it's something I want you to really chew on after you finish listening to us.
Okay.
We all know Don't Fear the Reaper. It is an undeniable masterpiece. But does the sheer blinding brightness of that one massive hit actually blind us to how weird and experimental the rest of the album truly is?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right. Does the average listener ever actually get past track 3 to hear the Paperboy voice or the Patti Smith poetry? Or does the overwhelming success of The Reaper actually hide the true democratic genius that made the band so special in the first place?
It's the blessing and the absolute curse of having a signature song.
Definitely something to think about the next time you're driving and that iconic guitar riff starts playing on the radio. Thanks for diving deep with us into Agents of Fortune today.
Until next time.